Have you ever complained when your taxi or auto rickshaw ride hailing app suggests a price during peak hours that makes you want the government to step in and rein them in? Don't worry, the government of Karnataka just did that. They fixed the rates for all the taxis and auto rickshaws. When the water crisis hit in Bengaluru, the government of Karnataka did the same thing again. They immediately fixed the prices for all the water tankers ferrying the water to the people who don't have water connections and relied on groundwater. And they seized all the vehicles saying they can't do anything anymore. We tell you what to do. So every time prices go up, we shout for the government to rein it in. Is this the right thing to do? It makes us all feel good. But have we actually got ourselves in a mess which will hurt us in the long run? Or are we too busy to care? I invited Anupam Manur on the show to discuss this. Anupam teaches economic reasoning and macroeconomics in Takshashila's public policy programs. We share a few common interests, among which economic reasoning, cycling, and the urge to shout from the rooftops. Folks, pay attention. You may be asking for the wrong things. Anupam, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Sathya. Amazing to be here.
So, as I was saying, there is the taxi prices and auto prices and everything. It was going through the roof. There was surge pricing, and people were saying it is unaffordable. There was a variability in price that I personally was not able to, understand. Why am I being so-called fleeced by this, right? We are used to having a meter with 120 rupees or 15 rupees or whatever on an auto rickshaw, and suddenly you have variable pricing in an app. But you wrote a piece recently saying control of pricing is a bad move because the Karnataka government has now cracked down and said we will set the prices. Why is it a bad move?
There's a lot to unpack in the question that you asked, but let me ask you this. Since you brought up the auto meter and you're saying, okay, things were very happy, there's an auto meter we used to pay. Satya, in the last 20 times that you took an auto, not through Ola or Uber, just took an auto which is, on standby, how many times did you pay by the meter?
It has been a long time, but I have tried to hail autos when the Ola and Uber didn't come. They never even came. So forget meter. I didn't even get them to ply. 1 or 2 times I did, but there was a chance to it. I don't think it was.
Yeah, you could have gotten the auto, but how many times would you have even paid by the meter? My understanding is that the probability is just, I don't know, maybe 5%, maybe 10%. So those metered solution clearly does not work. I think every single Bangalorean will vouch for this, that the meters on the auto is more like an antique piece. It's something to look at, appreciate from a distance, but nobody will turn it on, right? So you can't put meters. That's clearly not the way that this goes forward. The second part that you mentioned is about affordability, right? That it's not affordable. But let me put a counterpoint right away. I know it seems expensive, but the fact that all of the existing Ubers are already taken up by people, which is why you're not getting the taxi, means that it is affordable. People are spending for it, right? So this is what in classic economics you call as stated preference versus revealed preference. Stated preference is, what you say, oh, it's too costly, I can't take Uber, etc. But if every day you find yourself taking an Uber, it means, your revealed preference is different. It clearly shows that you can afford it. You're taking it. Do you like paying that much? Absolutely not. Nobody likes paying anything for anything, really. I mean, if I can get a mobile phone for 5,000 rupees, if I can get the latest iPhone for 5,000 rupees, I'll ask for it. But the fact that I've actually paid, whatever, 1,20,000 for that iPhone and bought it means that I don't mind paying that much. I've actually paid that much, right? So I can crib about the prices, but that's not the same thing as whether I can truly afford it or not. So you have to keep that in mind as well. Every day, thousands and thousands and thousands of people in Bangalore pay that much and take an Uber. And that means that those people can actually afford it, right? So that's the second part. The third part is, why pricing or trying to fix prices is a bad move. I think there is centuries of evidence in economics as to why such kind of price fixing does not work. Right. Again, I'd written this funny piece in Times of India about how Alauddin Khilji in this, in 1500s and 1600s tried to fix prices and how that did not work. To all the way, I can find literally, and I'm not joking, I'm not even exaggerating here, I can find a million examples where governments across the world have tried to fix prices and have terribly failed in doing so. Because that's not how economics works. If there is there are very few things in social sciences that you can say with a great deal of certainty, right? Or with a lot of confidence saying this is how it is. Pricing is one of those things. You can actually say with near 99.99999% confidence that price fixing does not work. It's not, as the way I think about it, trying to fix prices is not like trying to make a wish to a genie where you make a wish and suddenly it comes true. It's not how it works, right? There are very real people involved. There are millions of people involved with very different kinds of their own incentives at play, what they want to achieve, their own preferences. So you can't push a mandate saying from today onwards everybody will charge only this much for cabs, and everybody will pay that much. That's not how it works. So we can go into details of why that will not work, especially to do with taxis. What are some of the consequences, or what are the effects of that? But for now, let's just start with that principle that something like pricing is a complex system. It's a multifactorial system. So prices are determined by the weather. It could be dependent on the actual demand and supply, how many drivers there are, how many people are asking for a ride. It can be determined by, for example, the kind of vehicle it is. We know that there's discrimination there from, if you take a SUV or a sedan to a small, micro, mini, etc., right? So it's dependent on that. It's dependent on whether, for example, it's raining or not. So weather conditions. It's dependent on whether there is a well-functioning AC or not. It might be dependent, for example, on the driver's ratings. So there's so many things that go into the pricing system, and it's kind of rather silly to imagine that you can take all of that away and you can just put in one price and say, voila, now everybody should do this. So dictators have tried this across the world. Again, Mugabe in Zimbabwe tried this to, Pol Pot tried this to somebody else. Mao famously tried it. Hitler tried it, and so did Stalin. But in all of this, with all of their power, imagine, and that's the point I'm trying to make. Even with Stalin's power over the state, he could not achieve price controls. So the Stalin in Tamil Nadu nor DK Shivkumar in Karnataka can make it.
Yeah, so we'll get into that. But as a user, I think of this as whenever I feel I'm being fleeced, or I feel that there was something I was paying and suddenly it became more and it is becoming less, the variability seems to make us think that somebody is fleecing us at some point in time. Suddenly we draw parallels to possibly other goods like minimum support price on crops or some such thing, right? We never ask, why are you not fixing the price of the refrigerator we buy or the television we buy or anything? But when it comes to certain goods like transportation, or I'll come to the water part, that's another thing. But before we get to that, why do we think that certain goods like a taxi or an auto rickshaw suddenly needs to be controlled? Is there something in this good that we feel is different from my refrigerator or my sofa? A private consumption thing, I am okay paying whatever they charge. I'll go by the brand and all those things. But when you get an SUV for a higher, even in that, if I'm shown an SUV at a higher price and a cheaper vehicle, I'm able to distinguish. But somehow we have drawn a median on price in some way. I don't know against what. And this pricing variability seems to put us off. How would you explain something like that? And is that why people cry out for some? I was just curious about this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it is a curious thing. As you said, there are lots of places where so a couple of things. One, things like refrigerators, TVs are not bought on a daily basis. Right? So you buy it maybe once in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, etc. Even mobile phones, you don't buy it on a daily basis. So therefore, you don't really feel that variability too much. It's not something that is tracked. But even on day-to-day items, for example, there is enough variability. Onion prices within a matter of 20, 30 days can shoot up from 20 rupees a kilo to 80 rupees a kilo. And people understand that, by the way. Nobody asks for, we should fix the price of onions. So some of their people understand agricultural products. Even rice, by the way, has been steadily increasing. The price of rice has been steadily increasing. Price of vegetables. I mean, people talk about overall inflation, for example, that food inflation is high. And so therefore can be supported in some way. There is some kind of demand on those lines, but nobody asks for fixing the price, right? So in terms of no volatility. So while we understand, if the price of onions can go up because of demand and supply, I don't know why that idea does not translate to this to taxis, right? So one of the crucial things I suppose we should talk about now is what is the role of price.
Yeah, tell me about
Why should we fear price or whatever or, I think we should talk about what is the role of price, right? And the greatest thing is that there's no parallel system in the entire universe that humankind knows that can deliver the kind of efficient and effective outcomes that the pricing system can. Right? Now, many of these ideas are counterproductive or counterintuitive. Sorry, not counterproductive, counterintuitive, because you think that prices going up is bad for us, or prices going, that volatility is bad for us. But I would argue that all of our welfare, in fact, depends on the price system working well.
How's that?
And the price going up is actually a good thing in many of the cases, right? This is very difficult for most people to digest, but hopefully we have enough time to unpack all of this. I have hundreds of examples where we can do this, from things that happen in emergencies, COVID, etc. But in all of those cases, I would say the price system should work. Right? Now, let's look at what does the price system do. The price actually does two things, right? Price acts as an incentive, and price acts as a signal. Now, what do we mean by price acting as an incentive? When prices go up, we know this, right? Through the law of demand, etc. When prices go up, we buy less of it. And this is what all of us do, right? Something becomes more costlier, we buy less of it. When also at the same time, and this is crucial, when prices go up, people supply more of it, right? So if the price goes up and I can make a higher profit, I will supply more of it. So that is one thing that's at play. The second thing that is at play is competition. And this is crucial. When the price goes up, more people are actually willing to supply. And because they're willing to supply, the prices and supply increases, automatically prices goes down. So imagine this, right? Just try to imagine this. I always try to think of all of this in a simple example. Let's say you and I, Sathya, we go out. Right, we've gone out, we don't know each other, we've just we go out, we have gone to a pub, we've had a lot of beer, as you do normally. No, I'm joking, but let's say we've had a lot of alcohol, now it's 1 o'clock or something, 12:31, we step out of the bar and we both want to go home. Right? Imagine that I am a puny man who's scared generally, who's afraid of walking alone at night. I'm not very comfortable, etc., and I want to go home. Whereas you know your neighborhood really well. You're big and strong, and you have a lot of friends who on call by, etc. Right? So basically, you're safe, and I'm not. Now, let's say we call for a taxi. Okay, we call for a taxi, and there's maybe 10 others like us, but we, all of us are trying to, it's last call. Pubs are shut. We got out. Now we got to go home, and we've called for a taxi. Now, who should the taxi come to? Right now. Of all the ways that we can think of allocating, right? So what are the different ways of allocating? We can share, but again, I don't know who you are, you don't know who I am. Sharing is not many times of this thing. We can defer it to an authority. I mean, let's say a policeman decides, oh, you get it. But again, that's so random, right? I mean, the policeman can say, I like Sathya because he's a Kannadiga, whereas Anupam is something else. Or I don't know, I mean, some random arbitrary things, which is, again, might not result in a fair outcome. So it could be that the cab driver himself decides, but again, that is arbitrary. So all of that, it could be luck, it could be toss of coin, 50-50, it could be first come, first serve, right? But all of this, if you really think about it, nothing gives a fair outcome. What is the fairest outcome here? The fairest outcome is the one who's really desperately needs it is the one who'll be willing to pay more for it. Right. And so therefore, in that situation, if I'm, as I said, I have to get home, I'm feeling unsafe, I'll pay more for it. I'll say, okay, if normal fare is 80 rupees, I'll pay 200 rupees. Just take me home. Right. And that is fair because I'm the one who wants it most and I'm the one who gets it. So now let's say the price goes up to 200 rupees. You automatically say, listen, if it is 200 rupees, I don't mind waiting for half an hour on the street. Right? Or I'll try, if metros are open, I'll take a metro, or I might just hitchhike, or I'll walk home. You're a healthy young man, so you can walk home. Or more famously, you probably have your cycle there. So you'll say, I'll take my cycle back home, right? Whereas, let's say somebody like me doesn't want to do that. I'll pay more. So in that sense, it's actually fair. The one who needs it gets it. The one who doesn't need it because the price has gone up, you'll say, it's okay, I don't want that cab, right? But that's only part of the story. The other part of the story, which is very interesting, is now because the information is out there that, there's people who are willing to pay 200 rupees for this ride, immediately 4 other cabs around that area will come then. right? That's what surge pricing does. So that's the second part, which is price acts as a signal, as in it is able to convey vast amounts of information in a bite-sized this thing, right? So for example, all those taxi drivers doesn't need to know anything about Anupam's life or Anupam's preferences or Satya's life and Satya's preferences or the other people there, how much they drank. They don't need to know any of that. They just get to know that people are willing to pay more. And so therefore they'll come there. Immediately supply goes up, and because supply goes up, the prices automatically come down. So in all of this, right? One, I get the cab. Two, there is more supply, and so therefore even the people who are waiting will actually eventually get a cab, right? At lower prices. This is why the pricing system is fair, and it's fairer than every other kind of system that you can think of.
Why then does the government jump in? Let's take the Khilji thing. Give us an example. What happens when the price is itself fixed by the government? What are the consequences of what has already been done? What happens?
So two questions there. Why does the government do it? Now, the government feels like it has to intervene when the prices get high, supposedly. But for me, so, okay, first, do I genuinely think that there is a slight problem that the prices are consistently higher? I think so, yes, right? But you have to figure out, why are the prices consistently higher? The prices are consistently higher because there's not enough competition. And there's not enough competition between different things. Now, look at, I'm going to rant here, Sathya. I hope you and the listeners have a little bit of patience.
No, we have a lot.
Okay. See, genuinely, when does price generally go down over a long run for any commodity? It's only when you have increasing supply, which means that there is true competition. Now, if there are, for example, people making profits, supply automatically increase. That's what I said. I painted a fairy tale picture, right? Where, prices now, Anupam pays more, suddenly more people will come in, everything's happy, right? But now, my contention here, my submission here is that is not actually allowed by the government.
Also.
Right? Now, think about, what is competition? What do I mean by competition? Competition here would mean, one, that you have a good and efficient public transport system. That metros run frequently, metros run to across the city, metros run with not too much crowd, that you at least get a place to stand. You have a good, efficient transport system in terms of buses or any other kind of thing. You have autos that function, maybe. For example, why does Bangalore not have, the Mumbai equivalent of your Kali Pilis, right? Normal taxis. Bangalore doesn't have that. It's only app-based taxis. So there's no competition there. And we can discuss why all of that happened, right? Bangalore doesn't have an efficient system of even, for example, and this is, I just cannot for the life of me imagine why they've done this, but we've seem to ban things like two-wheeler taxi, right? So we push back against that. So we don't have that. That's another competition, right? That's another way of competing. Then we don't have shared autos in Bangalore for some really silly reason. By the way, we can go into that silly reason as well, but we don't have shared autos. We don't have things like, at one point of time, we had shared buses, by the way. There was an app, basically Uber for buses. And we said that is illegal. And so we stopped that as well. We don't have, by the way, even when we're talking about buses, we don't have private buses in Bangalore. Have you noticed there's no private buses? They're only government-run buses. We don't allow for private buses. Why? Why is that? So, and then, of course, your favorite topic, it's a nightmare for pedestrians. It's a nightmare for cyclists. That's, again, competition for Uber, right? If it is 2 kilometers, I can take my cycle. But if I'm always worried to death that I'll get run over, I'm not going to take my cycle. There are 100 people who say, okay, I can't. I'm worried for my life. So they won't take out the cycle. Again, you've killed that as a competition. People can't walk. There's no footpaths anywhere in the city. So again, there's no competition there. You can think of, for example, Quick Ride. Those shared where, you and I can pull in a car and get 2 other people if you're going in. We've tried to ban that as well. So every way that you can provide competition, which will actually reduce the prices, we seem to have stopped it. We can think about why. I mean, there's something called the Stagecoach Act, which belongs to the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, or early 1900s, which says that a car which stops, or car or any kind of transport system, has to do just point to point. It can't pick up people on the way.
So that's the Contract Carriage Act. The Stage Carriage Act is only being done by the BMTC. Only the bus has the right.
So the Carriage Act, right? Which says that you can't pick up people on the... Why? What kind of stupidity is that, right? How does it matter? So through that, we've actually banned things like Uber Pool, Uber Share, or whatever, Ola Share, plus things like Quick Ride, which were good solutions. I mean, it helps decongest the city, and it helps in reducing prices because supply has gone up, not enough demand, and so therefore, number of people demanding for Uber and Ola goes down, therefore prices go down, right? The surge pricing doesn't apply. So all of these things we've reduced. My final gripe is this idea that we have this yellow board versus white board, which is again a very silly thing if you ask me. Why is it that we care about whether it's a whiteboard license or a yellow board license? The way that it works across the world, I mean, I'm just giving context to most people. Across the world, by the way, we don't have these things called commercial this thing. I can, in the evening, if I'm right now, instead of doing this podcast, I can open my phone, open my Uber app and say, okay, I find that about 20 kilometers, 2 kilometers from here, there's a huge demand, right, for taxis. I have a car, and I have nothing else to do. I mean, I'm an economics professor. I generally never have anything useful to do. So I might as well take my Uber, go there, do a few rides. I make money. But not just that, I make money and at the same time, increase supply, increase competition, reduce prices. We don't do that. We don't allow for that. We have all this distinction about yellow board versus white board, which, by the way, there's no good reason why we should have that distinction. So anybody should be able to get on the road, provide the taxi service, as long as you're onboarded, right, by your Uber and Ola, and put all kinds of safety concerns on Uber and Ola. So there's a whole bunch of these solutions available, which we've not taken, and therefore the prices are high at a sustained basis.
So this is basically coming down to people having choices. It's also called choice poverty in transportation, is that you don't provide choices and you are not able to provision more competition, and hence you're saying people are just hanging on to the only auto rickshaw they can find and the only taxi they can find, because they don't find any other means of transport, or they don't feel safe in walking and cycling and public transport and all of these things. That's a fair argument. Now so let's say I wanted to come to this bike taxi thing that came up, right? So there are 2-3 things when they fix the price also. They basically, I think they've said that less than 10 lakhs is 24 rupees, less than 15 lakh, greater than 15 lakh is. How am I supposed to know that? Should I now start understanding the brands of the vehicles, or they can fleece me? And the key thing in this is all the prices are higher. It is going to cost you 62% more now, or 62 to 72% more if you were going from Electronic City to the airport, right? So it is actually, they've increased the fares in such a way that they cater to something. With the bike taxis, it has been banned allegedly at the behest of auto drivers.
Correct.
And auto drivers, I have spoken to people within the scheme of things, and they themselves tell me it is very hard for auto drivers to follow the meter. And they're telling me themselves that there is a category of people who really don't want to do this. Some of us are trying to be nice, whereas the rest of them are trying not to be nice, and they have incentives not to be nice. Now, in all of this being such a mess, government trying to create these price bands seems to me like they are trying to satisfy certain sets of people for something. Why share autos is not allowed? The auto rickshaw guy doesn't want anything that competes with him, and they hold this way because they are a block, right? The Uber guy has his way of doing whatever he's doing, and now with Namayatri opening up, there seems to be a little bit of competition. But where do you see this going? One thing I think we need to be very clear about is that pricing is not a good thing for the government to get into, and they should allow the market to determine the prices. Now I come back to this whole thing about it has happened with the water now, right? It's something that we have to pay attention to. DK Shivakumar in his talks before he announced the price control said something to the effect of water belongs to the government.
Water doesn't belong to any individual. It belongs to the government. That is the law of this country.
I don't know how to interpret that. As an economist, how would you interpret something like that? And then he goes on to say, we are going to take all these vehicles and we are going to deliver water. How is water looked at vis-a-vis transportation? We talked about how transportation is looked at by you and me. How is water looked at by people?
So, Sathya, there's again a long question, so I have a long answer. But can I just close the bracket on transport before
Please, please.
Water?
Please.
Because there's two things that I still haven't answered really. One is on, again, why does the government do this? So I gave, one is face value, that they're concerned about customers, but
Yeah.
I don't think anybody believes that. And it is true that in Karnataka and Bangalore especially, the political economy of lobbying seems to be extremely strong, and for whatever reason, the auto union holds a lot of sway. Right now, funnily enough, some of this price fixing is not just by the auto union, but in fact, there's a new taxi drivers association, which includes both Uber and Ola taxi drivers and non-Uber and Ola taxi drivers, who think that by fixing prices, they're going to get more money. Right. And so therefore, they've lobbied the government. And again, for me, I find it absolutely unpardonable that the government allows itself to be taken hostage to the demands of the auto driver union and some taxi drivers union at the behest of your entire population who wants to move from point A to point B. But I just want to again introduce a slight kind of a concept here, which is called basically concentrated benefits and diffuse costs. Right? What do I mean by that? So there's a lobby union here, right? Auto drivers who buy, and let's say taxi drivers union. You make one move, and it clearly makes them happy, and you think that you're going to win over their votes. The cost, however, is diffused across the entire population of Bangalore. So while you can almost guarantee, let's say, I don't know how many auto drivers there are, but just on the top of my head, if you can guarantee 10,000 votes, but it's going to affect maybe even 13 million people. But that, what's a Bangalore population? 1.3 million?
14 million.
14 million, right? So 1.4 crores. So that 14 million people, it's going to affect, but it's not going to affect them in a way that they're going to vote against you. Right? Because every single, when we vote, we're going to, vote based on a number of factors, whether the roads are built, whether something else is done, etc., whether there's job opportunities, a whole bunch of things. We're not going to vote because your taxi, this thing is fixed. But the people, on the other hand, the 10,000 people are definitely going to, not definitely, but they think that they're going to vote for them because you've given them this. So that's part A, right? That's the reason why they do it. That's the idea of concentrated benefits and diffuse cost. So you want to always try and capture that concentrated benefit. Right? That's the one bit. The second bit, I think the problem is that the taxi drivers who imagine that they're going to get more, it's not going to happen. Right? Now, with this new fixed prices, what do you think will happen? It's not that because you fix prices, magically people will start following it. One, as you said, because it's based on the cost, which is an extremely silly way of doing it, people will break it. You'll find... that's what I'd asked funnily as to how long before people start giving out invoices, right? For the cost of the car. And it's everybody's going to start getting invoices which says I'm in, my cost of the car is 15 lakhs and above and so on. Yeah. It's very tricky thing. Second, you can't monitor. Do you really expect the Karnataka government to have the capacity to monitor each ride and say whether it was based on, again, the cost of the vehicle and it was actually this much? You're going to have a black market. Literally, you might have one cost which is, say something, and then the auto, what we've done is basically earlier, right? If I opened Uber or Ola and I booked a cab, I would get a particular number. I would say yes, and I can be guaranteed that at the end of the day, I'm paying that much. Now that's no longer going to be the case. You asked about the unintended consequence of the effects of this. This is what is going to happen. I will now book a cab. It'll say a particular number. That guy will come up and say, sir, you got to give me this much more or I'll cancel. Right? And so very soon you'll have a whole bunch of these black markets thing, right? One amount you pay on the app, you give something extra, that entire system will break down, right? And so you, by doing something like this, the one part of the transport system that was somehow working, you're going to break that as well.
So this was interesting for me when you talked about the yellow board. I wrote an article around that as well on my Medium blog, which is no more yellow boards, right? Why this distinction at all? In that, I was trying to identify this yellow board gives a certain government department like the Regional Transport Office the ability to dish out this board and in return ask them to come over ostensibly to say, I will do fitness checks, I will do this, I'll do that. All the drivers hate it. Yeah, that they have to go stand there for a fitness check and all those things. But yet they live with it because they are getting this benefit of fare fixation, which is they can steamroll the government into fixing whatever they want. And if they don't, they will anyway bypass it by saying that the government didn't do this and hence I am going to charge something totally. Oh, the inflation has gone up. They never revised the fares, so I'm not going to do that. Third thing is they somehow seem to prefer being under the government because it assures them this minimum floor price for some reason. They don't want a game which beats them down on the price. They seem to want to have a comfort cushioning from these guys. And when there is COVID and other things, they have run to them for help and saying, "Oh, you know what? I'm a yellow board because you told me so, and now you need to take care of me." There's a lot of social benefits, that concentrated benefits that they haggle for themselves.
Correct. So, I mean, this is a standard case, Satya. I mean, whether it is taxi drivers and yellow boards, or whether it was Tata and Ambani and Reliance and so on, right? It's the same thing. No incumbent, no person who's currently in the market wants more competition. Consumers want more competition.
Correct.
But as a player, if I'm a player, I don't want anybody. I don't want more competition, right? So that's a standard thing. So taxi drivers don't want. I mean, if you open it up, and as I said, if suddenly Anupam starts taking out his car and providing service, the taxi driver will feel that he's going to get hurt, right? That he's not going to get enough money. So they will fight against it. That's the same thing why auto drivers, for example, have beaten up quite a lot of two-wheeler taxis, etc., because it's competition, right? So no incumbents like competition. That's a universal truth, even though they're actually mistaken in that, because in the short run, yes, they might get this thing, but competition is what leads to better overall. I mean, it leads to better innovation. It leads to even just more money for them, because if you're protected, in the long run, you will not thrive. And I don't want to get into that. There's an entire kind of economic literature that talks about it. But for now, let's just assume that, basically no incumbent likes competition. And so therefore they will fight tooth and nail. They'll lobby the government, etc., to go against it.
But if there was a public service commitment as a welfare measure by the government, I don't think the autos and the taxis are the place to put it. It might possibly be public transport or some such thing, right? Is there a space for some kind of, let's say the lower income people cannot fight these rates. There needs to be some amount of basic transportation to be provided.
Correct.
Where should the government be looking at? Okay.
Which is where the buses come in, which is where the buses and the metros and so on come in, which is why you need that. That's why I'm saying you need competition of all kinds. You don't need, I mean, you need somebody to offer Mercedes-Benz limousines as well. And you need shared autos where, 6 people can go in. You've seen in other cities, you have shared autos, which go on a fixed route. And you have, maybe 8 people, 10 people even in an auto, and you pay 10 rupees for even, as much as 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers, etc. Right? So you need everything. You need buses, you need shared autos, you need two-wheeler taxis, you need everything. So for places like India and Bangalore in particular, the answer is always all of the above. Whereas we've said none of those things, and we were only concentrating on one thing and saying, prices are high, so let's fix it. Ridiculous.
What do you think of that water argument? Because that's also come under price control now. And there is a crisis. Somehow that statement seems to me like when he said that, I don't know if he's confused it with something else. Water should be looked at differently from transport, should be looked at differently from something else. How do you see that?
Yeah, so this is a tricky thing, and I assume that what I'm about to say will put off a lot of listeners, but please bear with me at least, with an open mind till I finish my arguments. Water is, for all practical purpose, like any other good, right? People not like this, but firstly, we have to distinguish between the water that we get in our tap and the water that is available in the river. Right? Now, most people tend to think of this as 2 things, right? 2 buckets of arguments that generally come about. One is that water is a free gift of nature, of God, of life, of universe, of something. Right? Basically, it's looked at as a free gift. Second, it says that water is essential for life. And therefore, it has to be free and a whole bunch of things. Let's pick apart both these arguments, right? One, water is not a free gift. Yeah, if you happen to be one of the few lucky people who are staying right next to the river, yes, then it's a free gift. You can take as much as you want. You have that privilege and so on. But I don't know. I don't think any of your listeners are staying actually close next to a river where they can draw water for home use. I would imagine that, again, 99.9% of your listeners are people who are staying in homes away from the river where water is pumped from the river to their houses. So there's a lot of resources that are spent in providing that water, in supplying that water, right? So anything that has an economic cost for provision is therefore what we call as an economic good. It's not a free good, right? It's an economic good, as in it takes money. So you can imagine. Let me paint this picture for most people, right? Where does am I right in assuming that a lot of your listeners are Bangalore based? So then I can give Bangalore examples.
Sure, give Bangalore examples. I've been doing that.
Imagine Bangalore, right? Where does Bangalore get its water? Bangalore gets its water from Kaveri River. Where is Kaveri River? Kaveri River, the closest point to Bangalore is in TK Halli, right? And TK Halli is what, 150 kilometers away.
150.
Right? It's about 150 kilometers.
100 plus, yeah.
Water has to be pumped all the way from TK Halli to Bangalore. Let's say around 100 kilometers, 100 plus kilometers. Now, this is also not flat ground. This is at an elevation, right? So Bangalore, as most people know, is at an elevation of about 900 meters, 850 meters above sea level, whereas TK Halli is much lower than that, maybe 400 meters above sea level. So it has to be pumped to about 300, 400 meters. Anything, as you know, pumping upwards is also going to cost more money, right? Then how does it get pumped? Through elaborate pipelines. So we know, famously the pipeline road on Kanakpura Road, right, which runs parallel to Kanakpura Road. So that's a pipeline road. So those are heavy, big pipes where water is. Then it's not just that you magically just give water that's running in the river to your house taps, right? That water has to be stored. It has to be processed in terms of like purified. It has to be then distributed along pipes to individual houses and so on. All of this costs a lot of money. Then there's electricity costs, maintenance costs, staffing costs, actual pipeline and distribution cost. It requires certain places those water tankers where you store water tankers, as in not the old water tank, the physical building where you store water. It takes all of that money, right? So therefore you can't give it for free. If it costs this much, you have to provide at the cost at which it's required. So typically, if in economics you say that you have to charge something to the marginal price of a marginal cost of providing that, right? So what that means is, if it's going to cost you 80 rupees to provide 1 kiloliter of water, you got to charge at least 80 rupees for it. I'm not saying you should make a huge profit out of that. Maybe that's where you say, okay, water is slightly different. You can't use it as a complete profit-making thing. Like it's not the same as iPhones. It's not the same as this thing. In that sense, maybe it's a little bit more different. So, but the point of it is that it's an economic good. It takes a lot of money to provide that, and so therefore you need to cost that, right? So the calculation that I have done through a whole bunch of things is that it takes roughly about 80 to 100 rupees per kiloliter for our BWSSB, right? 80 to 100 rupees per kiloliter. So that's the cost of providing water. How much do we charge for water?
Something around 10, 11.
Minimal, man. So up to 8,000 liters or 8 kiloliters, we charge 7 rupees. From 8 kiloliters to 25 kiloliters, we charge 11 rupees. From 25 to 50 kiloliters, we charge 25 rupees. And the highest slab, which is above 50 kiloliters, we charge 45 rupees. Right? So on an average, an average consumer consumes something like maybe between this 8,000 to 25,000 liters, okay, in a month. So for that, imagine they're going to pay 11 rupees per kiloliter, whereas BWSB, it costs them 80 to 100 rupees per kiloliter. So the difference is something like massive. It's about between 70 to 90 rupees per kiloliter. Right? That's not small. That's big. That's big money that is being given for free. So that's the first part. Second, as you said, is water an essential good and so on? See, I'm always kind of wary about this idea of what is essential and what is non-essential. Who decides these things? You ask a kid, rather you ask a teenager, they'll tell you that a mobile phone is absolutely essential. Internet is absolutely essential. They'll say transportation is absolutely essential. So who decides what these things are, right? It's very murky territory. You'll say, okay, what is required for life? Now, again, what is life? Is it just breathing and living? I don't know. I don't know if that is the same. Maybe life is a bit more than that for human beings, right? So it means having jobs. Is jobs essential? So then should we say that government should provide jobs for everyone? Should we say that government should provide internet to everybody? Should we say that government should provide mobile phones to everybody? I know I'm making this absurd, but I'm just saying everybody has different ideas of what is essential. And so therefore, using that, we can't say what should government provide and what should not. Finally, where is water different from air? Those are two different things. As I said, now air is something that nobody needs to provide to you. Air is available everywhere. The minute that, unfortunately, maybe Delhi is going there, but the minute where natural air is no longer breathable and you need oxygen mask, that's obviously already priced. Right, that's already priced, and that's, it comes in a oxygen tank, etc., and that's priced. But otherwise, you don't need to, nobody needs to provide it to you. There's no cost attached to providing it. Whereas, as I've hopefully illustrated, there's a very clearly a cost attached to providing water, and therefore water is different from air. And if you look at it that way, in economic terms at least, water is like any other good. It's what you'd call as a private good. It's a pure form private good.
Water doesn't belong to any individual. It belongs to the government. That is the law of this country.
So there is two types of water. One is the piping, we are not paying enough. There's a true cost of water which we are not paying, and it is politically inconvenient for a lot of politicians to try and charge the true cost of water. It's just like any other lobby. They just don't want to piss people off with anything more, and we always revolt against any price increase. There is a clear loss aversion to what we are going to lose, right? So there is an aversion to what we are going to lose. So the people will automatically revolt. The groundwater, for example, is something that's available in the ground, and we are supposed to recharge the aquifers. We are digging and we are pulling it out, and the tankers are feeding off of groundwater. If is groundwater like the river, or is it like, if the tanker is pulling it out and providing it to you at a service, and he does it at whatever rate it is, and you apply some other principle and say, no, it is essential, I'm going to control it. Is that a good move to try and control the water service tankers and setting prices for that? How is this price setting different from maybe the other price setting we talked about earlier?
Fantastic point, Sathya, because there is a difference between groundwater and piped water. So as I said, piped water is, you need all of that infrastructure. It costs money to give, right? Whereas groundwater, there is a little bit of initial investment where you need to drill into the ground, put one pipe for yourself, and then you can extract forever. But the difference between the two is that, again, I'm just going to throw out an economic term, and then I'll explain hopefully better. Right? Groundwater is what we call as a common good. Right? What that means is that every time, this is the difference, right? Every time I pull out water from the ground, there is less for you to pull out. Right? So which means that this is what we call as rivalry, that my usage of that water directly affects your usage of the water. So while it is like, so again, you can imagine how this is different, right? In a typical, let's say, well-functioning river, there's plenty of water. Then if I take a bucket, it really doesn't matter too much, right? At some scale, even that starts mattering. Now, we're just talking about river usage for, let's say, personal drinking purpose. But what if I start using the river for polluting? That's also use of water, right? I need some place to dump my effluents. If, let's say, I'm a factory, I need some place to dump my effluents, and I use the river for that. Now, if I start using the river for dumping, it's going to start affecting your usage of the water for drinking. Right? So in all of these circumstances where if I use for drinking, it's going to affect your use of drinking. If I use it for polluting, it's going to affect your use of drinking, etc. I think those are what we call as common goods. So that again requires regulation. And the solution in that is trying to convert that common good into that private good. Right? Because now we look at Bangalore. I know I used a bunch of terminology there, but let me try and demystify all of that, right? Look at Bangalore. One of the big problems, apart from the fact that we have water shortage coming from Kaveri, is this idea of that we're, our underground aquifers, our underground kind of water table is depleting. It's going down massively. And the reason for that is everybody has a borewell. There's no regulation around it. There's nothing that stops us from extracting as much water as we want. And so therefore people are using as much, right? There's nothing that stops them. If today we have, some places might have water crisis in terms of Kaveri water, people will say, I'll pump out, and people will pump out enough from the ground such that then there won't be enough, right? And then on the flip side, nobody has an incentive to try and do rainwater harvesting, etc. You can have whatever laws, but we know those laws don't work. That's not how things work. So what happens there? This is the idea that this is what we call as tragedy of the commons. Every single person will look after themselves in a selfish way, but that looking after themselves, that is pulling out as much water, will directly affect the neighbor and the neighbor's neighbor and so on, right? So that is the problem when it comes to groundwater. So what do we need to do? Again, comes back to this pricing. We need to first monitor Groundwater usage, it's not that difficult because it's again through a pump. You can use the state's power to monitor instead of making laws which are saying that you should do rainwater harvesting, which, as I said, I mean, law, just making a law will not work in Bangalore, right? I mean, we have laws against going one way, but every single person goes one way, in Bangalore. So that's not the solution. But I'm saying, if at all you have to use whatever state capacity you have, because it's a one-time thing, I would say putting meters on groundwater usage is far more important than trying to enforce things like rainwater harvesting or other things. Because once you put a meter, then you start charging people for extracting water underground as well. Then immediately people will start saying, okay, I will then replace that water that I use. You can build a mechanism which clearly says, if you have groundwater harvesting, we will not charge you. If you don't have groundwater harvesting, we'll charge you for every drop that you extract from the ground, right? Something on those lines. I mean, we can think of much more sophistication, but I'm just saying for now, right now, there's no incentive. Why would I, install a groundwater harvesting system, rainwater harvesting system? I don't need to. I mean, if somebody comes for an inspection, I'll pay that guy whatever 500 rupees. I don't need to, right? That's what most people do. But that's not the solution. The solution is that I should want to do it. And when will I want to do it? When it starts pinching my wallet. When I'm paying a lot for both piped water, and if I'm paying quite a bit for, let's say, groundwater extraction, suddenly, before you know it, every single person in Bangalore will become an environmentally conscious person, which means that they will start conserving water. Right? They'll switch off taps. They'll fix a leaky tap. They'll start, doing rainwater harvesting. Whenever it rains, they'll even collect water in buckets, etc. You want people to become environmentally conscious. Charge them for it. That's the answer. There's nothing else that will work. Charge them for it. Put a price tag, and suddenly everybody will start saying, "Oh, we need to conserve water."
So the groundwater is not the equivalent of that thing that I'm living next to the river. I can pull what I want. So if I own the land, that doesn't mean I own the aquifer underneath.
Because that belongs to the community. Right? It doesn't belong to the government. And I want to absolutely correct Mr. D.K. Shivkumar and everybody else. It doesn't belong to the government. It belongs to the people. Right? And because we don't have a way of governing people amongst themselves, we entrust the government to make laws that makes it equitable for everybody to use it. That's the key thing. So it belongs to everybody, but we have to make sure that no one person can use more of it. And how do we do that amongst ourselves? We can't, right? Which is what we entrust the government to do. So it's really making the government a custodian. It's not ownership, right? It's saying we trust you with looking after this on our behalf or setting rules on our behalf for each of us to use, but they don't own it.
They might have paraphrased it from something else or understood. Now, here's the other thing. Now, let's say I took water out of my borewell, whether I paid for it or not, and I have some excess and I want to sell it to somebody else through a tanker, and I charge the money for it. How does economics look at something like that? Is it still frowned? Why is there a regulation on me being able to sell water? I understand it's already over-extracted and some people are extracting it and selling it to others. But let's say I had no resources to dig a borewell. I'm living on a 30-40 site and I'm dependent completely on piped water, which hasn't come, and I've built the house, but I need the water and somebody is willing to sell it to me. Now, there is responsiveness from the government, which will not be as good as a tanker is. And there is surge pricing there as well, just like the Uber, Ola type of thing. And he says, okay, now there is a lot of demand and here's my pricing signal. I'm going to charge more. Now the government could provide choice by saying, I will also run tankers for the needy and I'll give it at a lower rate. But is it fair to take over the private guys and say, the other thing they could have done is put a meter, but is it fair to take over and set prices? How do you differentiate between this pricing and the pricing on Ola Uber? Is there a difference?
Yeah. So right now, the reason why tankers are looked down upon and looked at as this big evil is because they're extracting water from the ground for free, right? And then they're charging a huge price for it, which seems inequitable because every time they extract water, as I said, somebody else will not have water, right? So that's why it is. But if you do, for example, the way that economics would look at this is, if, for example, they are going to pay for that water when they extract it, right? For every penny every drop that they extract, they pay the market price for it. Then sure, then it, according to me, it'll be a great service they're providing, right? Otherwise, it's theft. Right now, the problem with water tankers is it's theft. They're stealing from the community and selling at a high price. That's why they're looked down upon, and everybody has problems with it. But make them pay for it. Then you can have a legitimate service out of this. In fact, If people have land and you have good water there, install rainwater harvesting systems there so that it keeps getting repleted, then extract from there, sell that water. I would say it's a great service.
If you can
In
add
fact,
value.
yeah, it adds massive value to community, but you got to charge them for it. That's the point. You can't have it on a free basis which affects somebody else. So if you charge them for it, automatically they will install that rainwater harvesting system, right? Because now they found a profit source, right? And then legalize it. I have no problem with that, but not free water.
Because it's a community resource.
It's a community
Like,
resource. So you can't steal from the community and then sell for a high price. You can pay and then sell at a high price. Then basically what you're doing is you're doing that exactly same service as government. In fact, by the way, why is it that we think that the government should only provide piped water service? See, there are genuinely a lot of places where piping is difficult, it's very costly, etc. I'm fine. Let the government also do the same thing. By the way, government has a lot of land. Let them install rainwater harvesting system. Let them pump water out of the ground, make sure it's refilled, and then use that water to give to people who can't otherwise have. Right? I mean, in fact, for poor people, the entire problem of affordability can be one of that solution. Slums don't have piped water connections.
Yeah.
Right?
Not just a lot of rich households now don't have pipe water connection, because piping is not something you can just think of and put it tomorrow. It takes a budget of X amount of crores, and then you have to allocate the supply of this, and then it has a lag function. It has to catch up, like the previous guest was saying, Vishwanath. It's a lumpy investments which will come. There will always be a faster growth, and you have to do the mobile solution to the landline. It's, if you can use this as a delivery channel and enable that, and you take your fee that you need from them. I said this to somebody who was there in the Vidhan Sauda. I talked to them and said, instead of trying to take over, why don't you just tell them, this is the charge for the water, you pay this, and then you go and deliver on our behalf.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, I mean, that's absolutely fine. In fact, and then the reason why that piped water doesn't exist is because your BWSSB is completely broke. Yeah. And the reason why it's broke is because it's not charging correctly. Right? Because it's not charging correctly, it doesn't have any money to put down pipes. It has to again get it on loan, right? BWSSB is one of the most indebted public agencies that we have, and both BESCOM and BWSSB. And because we don't charge correctly for both electricity and water, they're always in debt. And if they're in debt, they're not going to make fresh, lumpy investments, as you said, right? Even if they do, they're going to make for, big, maybe societies that might come up like Prestige and so on, because it's, that's part, they would have paid them for it and so on. But what about independent houses at the periphery? They're not going to do that investment. So, I mean, again, it comes back to the idea that you're not charging correctly for water. And when you don't charge correctly for water, one, as I said, this entire thing about lack of piped water happens. Then the fact of wastage. Sathya, do you know that 30% of water gets wasted just on this route from TKLD to Bangalore?
I know.
30%. Yeah. That's like billions of kiloliters. I mean, I know, over a year, right? And that's a lot. And all of that is wasted because our pipes are leaky. Our pipes are not maintained well. And why is it not maintained well? Again, BWSP does not have the resources. They don't have the technical know-how to do all of these things. And so therefore you have, a lot of leakage. Then you get horrible quality of water, contamination. Right? Far too often, your stormwater drain and your piped water gets mixed up. You sometimes have water pipes bursting. You have something else happening, or contamination, not enough purification, etc. All of this, again, is because your BWSSB is broke. And they're broke because they're not charging correctly.
So in all of this, the common factor I see bringing it all together is that, one, the understanding of basic economics is that you should stay out of pricing in certain types of goods that you think are not necessarily common or public, but it is private in nature and that people consume, and that price is a signaling mechanism for certain types like transportation, which should be leveraged. The second thing I see is this idea of concentrated benefits and diffused costs. In all of this, from whether it is the taxi or the auto or the water, even the water, there's no guarantee that if the pipes are there, you're going to get water in it. It's mostly air, because the wallman holds the key on where he turns the lever. He'll go to the rich neighborhood and turn the lever, and he'll keep it shut for some other people. Right? There are lobbies across which is politically profitable for some people to cater to. And there doesn't seem to be a realization of basic economics in us as people to understand where government should step in and where they should not. And there seems to be a lot of understanding. I know that you wrote this book, right? Tell me about it. Why did you write it? What is it about? And why is all this important?
In fact, this is the perfect conversation to kind of illustrate why we thought we needed a book like that, right? So this book is along with a colleague of mine, Pranay, where we've been working together for, I don't know, 8-9 years, and a student of ours called Kathy, who did the illustration and probably took all the initiative to do this as well. But our idea was that many of these concepts, the things that I spoke about today, about just general pricing system, what is the role of government, when should the government intervene in markets, when should the government not intervene in markets, what is the role of market, society, and government, what are the things that should be solved for them? Because we, by the way, in all of this, we've not even talked about society, because that also plays a huge role. I mean, in not maybe in dense urban areas, but you go slightly further away, you'll find that there's a caste angle to water, there's a caste angle to, for example, water extraction. All of these are serious things, and that, for example, government and market cannot solve it. You can push laws, but that will not solve. You need a societal change for that, right? So I think we need to understand what is the role of all of these three entities, government, market, and society, for us to kind of have a better quality of life, for us to govern ourselves better, for us to understand the governing mechanisms and so on. So we felt that in many of these cases, I mean, increasingly, in just the last 2 weeks, I've written maybe, I don't know, 5-6 op-eds. And for me, that generally is a very bad sign, because while, okay, I am busy, but my busyness just means that the government is making more and more errors in policy making. They fix price of cabs, they fix prices of water, they fix prices of, by the way, now Supreme Court said we'll fix price of all healthcare procedures across the country, right? Which is, again, a very silly move, right? So lots of these things have happened, and you just realize that the concepts of economics don't seem to be very clear to a lot of people. The concepts of even civics don't seem to be very clear to a lot of people. For example, I mean, even in that Supreme Court case, for example, there's a very clear kind of state versus union, and who does these things, whether it's really the task of the Supreme Court to try and say, fix prices, etc. So there's a whole bunch of problematic things. And so therefore, I think the book is meant to give an easy, relatable way of people understanding the concepts of public policy. So, again, just to set context, the book We the Citizens is an illustrated book. It's a complete, what we see as a graphic novel or a comic book in public policy. I think it's the first of its kind, using lots and lots of examples which most people can relate to. Things like this, things about water, things about maybe Uber. There's some bits about superheroes and things like that, right? People that things that people can relate to, and hopefully the idea is that even in this, what we think about diffuse costs, right, and concentrate benefits, can we get more people to understand what are the true costs? Right, that it's not as diffuse, that it's going to affect you personally. If the government makes a mistake or an error in policy making, it's going to affect all of us. Can I get more people to understand that? And so therefore, while we have the auto union lobby, can we have an engaged citizen lobby? That's the aim, right? Can I have a lobby of engaged citizens which will ask for better governance mechanisms, not just pandering to small unions? I think that if you ask me in one sentence and how I can connect the two things, the conversation we had today and this thing, can I get more people to, become engaged citizens?
And I think that's the intention of this podcast as well, is that if you don't have the right information, you may ask the wrong things. And I'm already seeing that, because you're swayed by a lot of things that are said and done and told to you that this is the best way to do it and this is what you need. Whereas what you need is not necessarily what is being done. Thanks, Anupam, for coming on the show and clarifying this. I need you back on the show. There are lots of things that I want to talk to you about. But thanks for coming on and clarifying these issues.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me over, Sathya.